So here's our standard apostrophe. Go ahead and put it in here. It's really good to get the sizing right with apostrophes. So you see how it kind of leaves that space, that gap, and it kind of looks off. Maybe if I put it a little bit higher and tuck this in as tight as I can. Now that looks okay, but let's try one thing. Copy and paste, keep making our different versions or iterations. Let's zoom in. I have an idea. Instead of making it a simple apostrophe, what if we made it a water droplet? Because we are talking about plumbing, we're talking about water, so we're tying in another little theme here, trying to be creative. So let's grab our pen tool and make a little water drop. I'm just taking the pen tool, holding down, trying to create some curves. And we may need to get some ideas on Google of a good water drop shape, because doing it from memory, this isn't the prettiest water drop I've ever done. It's too fat, so I'm just changing these little handles, just adjusting them. That's not horrible. So let's go ahead. Let's see here though. Let me see if I can't make that a little rounded. So I'm doing the same thing I did with the P. So you notice that little emblem. Let me zoom in. The little round dot. Just going to grab and hold. Make it a nice rounded. This looks a little more smooth and polished. Zoom out. That looks nice. I'm going to make this small, about the size of the other apostrophe, and tuck it in there. So that kind of let me angle it. So we could do that, copy and paste again. We're having all our different versions we get to select from. I wonder if we reverse it. Does it look like a water drop still? Usually that kind of defies gravity, doesn't it? And it's pulling up on the water, so that may not work, but just trying out different versions. So I want to be able to close the gap as much as I can between the E and the S without it looking awkward. Just kind of noodling around. This is when you play around with sizing. Tuck it down. I think that looks okay. Let me do one more version. Copy and paste. You're probably getting dizzy. All these different versions. With logo design, you got to go quick. If you have an idea, you copy and paste and go for that idea. You can always delete it if you don't like it. You probably notice I haven't started messing around with colors yet, and that's on purpose. I usually wait to do colors until I have my final concepts ready. And this helps to kind of simplify the concepting process, because I think adding color to the mix can kind of complicate our design process, and so we could do that a little bit later. We don't want the logo to be totally dependent on color, but I do think in this case color is going to help elevate it and help make it nicer, because I think the water droplet can be a different color and we can highlight that a little bit. So right now it's all the same color. It looks the same. I think color will end up helping it, but we're going to wait until we're kind of done with our concept. So let's go through. I think the water droplet's definitely one we want to keep. So you can see how we messed with the kerning and the spacing as we get down to these later versions. And you can see how this version down here is much better than this top one. So let's go ahead and delete the ones we don't like. I think I want to keep the water droplet, so we're down to these two for this particular concept. We're going to do several others. So the difference between the two, I think this is lower and that's higher. Let me just pick the one that's the droplet's a little lower. So this is it. This is one concept. So let's try some others. So for our second concept, we have our first one kind of tucked up here. I want to isolate the P and really highlight it even more. So I'm going to separate the P from Pikes. And let's see if I can't copy and paste this. We're going to have Pikes spelled out. And I still like the look of this font, so I'm just copying and pasting from the first concept. And we got to pick a P. So let's pick this other P that doesn't have the sharp edges. And what if we put it on top like this? And so you notice with the P, it tends to be heavily weighted on this side. It seems to be light on this side, so it doesn't provide a ton of balance. So what if we added a circle with a stroke, and that could kind of help balance that P? Let me zoom in, put a circle here, and switch it to stroke, and let's make it a certain thickness. Just going to drag this over. And let's go to stroke. There's my stroke panel. And make this a little bit smaller. So that is one option. I think I need to group these two together. Group. There we go. Maybe not so thick. Let's back it off one notch. Maybe split the difference. So instead of 3 or 4, let me do 3.5. And this is points. I'm using points as a measurement. Great. Let me zoom out. And maybe now that I zoom out, I want to increase the thickness. So it's great, the perspective, the new perspective you get when you zoom out. Always great to do logo design from a little bit of a distance sometimes. I'm just kind of coordinating that. You make sure this, we can always just pop this on the grid and line it up. Or we could just do this and kind of eyeball it a little bit using my arrow keys and shifting it over. Just making sure it's kind of more center aligned. So great. So this is where we're going to play around with some different variations. So let's do what we did before, copy and paste. Let's swap out the P with this one. And I can kind of see an idea happening here with this version of the P. What if it pops out of the circle, kind of has more of a 3D effect, just like that. It looks a lot more like a pipe that way too. We can even use different colors to contrast it. So I'm not going to use color per se, but I can use different shades of gray to indicate color. Let's do kind of a light gray there. We could probably thicken that now. And let's zoom in. So I really like how it's popping out of that circle. I want to be able to have this go over this stroke, but I also want it to go under the stroke. So it looks like it's kind of 3D popping in and out. So one thing we can do is just manually trace over, or even better, let's copy and paste this stroke here. And this is where it gets a little complicated, so you can rewatch this if you need to. I'm just going to outline the path so it's no longer editable. So I'm going to go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke. So now it's just a solid shape. I'm going to get a rectangle here, about the same width of this P. Let me, oops, sorry if I'm making you dizzy there. I'm just doing a shape, and you'll see what I'm doing here in a moment. I'm going to bring this circle over on top. I'm basically going to punch this out. So I'm going to make that a different color so you can see. So I have our new circle, and I have this shape that I drew. Let me make that a different color so you can see that one. Okay, so I have these two different things. I'm going to select both of them. You take my shape builder tool, and I'm going to start subtracting. So I'm going to hold down hold down Option, Alt if you're on the Windows, and I'm going to delete the circle because that's the new circle we duplicated. I don't need that. I don't need that. Let's see. Perfect. So now we're left with this perfect shape that goes over the P. And now we can take the eyedropper tool, sample it. We could hand draw that over the P, but we could do that and get more of a perfect shape. So now I just need to noodle around and do some adjustments. So it didn't quite go over as much as I said. So let me kind of make it go over just a tad. It's not perfect, but it's okay. There seems to be a little green object in me, so let me just select next object below and delete that. Just tweaking it. This is really small stuff, but it's important because you want everything to look awesome. All about the details with logo designs. People take notice of details. So that looks great. So that's all we were trying to do, is cover up that P. So now the P goes over top and then under this, and so it creates kind of a neat effect. There we go. There's one option. So let's keep working on different concepts.